research and doctoral services. And just to let you know, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the website within the next few days. So I believe there is a link in the chat box to where that session will be located. If not, we'll go ahead and post that before the end of the session. I also wanted to point out that closed captioning is available. It is accessible by clicking on the CC icon at the bottom of your screen, and that should be able to pull up the text for this presentation. And finally, my colleague Denise Long is facilitating in the chat box. So I will not be able to see the chat box, unfortunately, until I open up Q&A at the very end of this presentation, but Denise is highly capable of answering all your questions during my presentation. So feel free to go ahead and just pop any kind of question that you might have into the chat box, and she will be able to answer there. And again, I will open up the session to Q&A at the very end. Unfortunately, I can't see your comments or hand raising while I'm presenting. So if you could just hold on until the last 5 or 10 minutes to ask questions, that would be great. And without further ado, let's get started. So reading and writing for the literature review. We will start by talking about finding and reading the literature. So the literature review defined. What is the literature review? It's any collection of materials on a topic, and it can consist of a few different types of sources. The most obvious and the most in quantity would be scholarly peer-reviewed articles. Government documents would also be acceptable, conference proceedings, personal communications, unpublished pamphlets, and internal documents. It exists as an account of what has been published on a particular topic by accredited scholars and researchers. So it is organized around and related to a thesis or a research question, your thesis or research. And the literature review will demonstrate what is both known and unknown. And it will also discuss the areas of controversy in the literature. And it will demonstrate that need for further research, which would be your research. So literature review is a self-contained end in itself. It will provide a preface or a rationale for original research. So that is your gap in the literature. So you will show where further research is necessary based on your topic. And it's typically required as a part of a grant or research proposal. And it's also an opportunity for publication. So the literature review is also a critical analysis of a segment of published material, and it will use summary, classification, and comparison based on the materials that you're examining. And it's more than just a summary. It's very important that it also reflects an organizational pattern. So that will include synthesis as well. A summary is a recap of important information from the source versus synthesis, which is a reorganization or reshuffling of that information, which offers this new interpretation. And there, of course, is where your original work will occur, by that reshuffling and reorganizing of the existing information. So we'll go on to the purpose of the literature review. It's also to convey to the reader what knowledge and ideas have been established on a particular topic. So throughout your reading, you will find strengths, weaknesses, and oddities. And an oddity may be anything that strikes you as unusual, or something you may have not seen previously, something that seems to not jibe with the previous source or what you've been taught. And that's really where a lot of rich material is in actuality, that can provide a lot of material for your argument. It also allows a researcher to demonstrate information-seeking skills So the ability to scan the literature efficiently to identify a set of useful articles and books. So as you go on, you'll learn to better seek the information, seek valid, useful information, and use your time more effectively. It also allows a researcher to develop critical appraisal skills. So the ability to apply principles of analysis to identify unbiased and valid studies. So some questions to ask yourself as you're developing the literature review. First of all, what is the specific research problem that the literature review seeks to resolve? Second, what type of literature review is to be conducted? Theories, policies, methodologies. And third, what is the scope of the literature review? Is it journals, books, popular media? How good am I at information seeking? The answer is not as good as a librarian. Do utilize the Walden librarians. They are excellent, and it's true. You will not be as good at information seeking as a librarian. No one is. I am consistently amazed by their knowledge base in terms of what has recently been published, search terms, key terms, places to look. Seeking out and making an appointment with a librarian as early as possible in your research process will help you exponentially. You want to ask yourself, have I critically analyzed literature? Have you done more than just skimming or reading through? Have I cited sources contrary to my perspective? This is important and an excellent way to get more material. Start to turn your thinking around in terms of who might disagree with the topic I'm investigating. Again, the point of the literature review is not to simply find sources that support your perspective, but to find sources on all sides of your particular topic to present that balanced perspective, balanced and objective. And finally, will a reader find the literature review to be relevant, appropriate, useful, and interesting? This is just a way to remind yourself that you are writing for the reader. This is your reader should be able to understand your topic, your arguments, and be able to locate your sources. So a template to keep in mind. First, you compile, gather the literature. Second, critique and determine the value. Third, categorize, organize according to common denominators. Fourth, comprehend, understand the content well enough to teach it. And fifth, compose, write the literature review. And then this is, of course, an iterative process, meaning it isn't necessarily in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 order. You will go back and forth, you will compile literature, you will do some writing, you will change your categorization, you will understand something at different levels in different points of your research, which will impact the writing. So this is an iterative process. It will all happen at different times and over again throughout the writing of your literature review. So search strategies. As I just said, the research will be an iterative process. And that is in part because the more that you research, the more you learn. And so the more you learn, the more ideas you get about further research. You become more of an expert in your topic. So you start to understand where you're saturated, where you might go further, and that sort of thing. So it's to be expected that your outline in your literature review and your text will change as you go on and learn new information from new sources. So planning, it's really important to have a plan when you search. You can waste a lot of time kind of blindly searching along without having this plan for your search terms, your possible sources, and then keep notes. It might seem like an additional task to write down where you've been and keep these notes, but it's really important to track what you've searched and where in order to best use your time. And you want to be prepared for that time investment. So set aside the hours needed to research. Sometimes it can feel like, because you're not directly producing written material, that the time should be less, or it should be, or it's not as important, but it is. So prepare to invest time in simply information seeking. Keep notes or a log so that you know, again, which terms you've searched and where. I promise you at some point, you will do the exact same search and go along the exact same trail, and you will not notice until you've already wasted a decent chunk of time, or at least I do that. So it is important to keep those notes. Brainstorm search terms and concepts. It's also important to give yourself that more creative time. Brainstorm, think about search terms, think about concepts. Take yourself out of the direct reading and critical activities, and give yourself a little bit of time to kind of freely think about some of the terms and concepts. And explore many possible sources. Don't just go to one place. Use those advanced library tools, the Boolean terms, and again, meeting with the librarian to learn where you can best search and better search for your term is a great idea as well. Be aware of resources outside of the library. Review your research and plan your next round. So kind of dive back in, maybe give yourself a break, take a breather, let the material kind of settle, get a fresh mind, and come back in again to continue to hone and your research and develop that review. So the model of the information search process, this is kind of interesting, and I think it's useful from my perspective just to have a sense of, I think you can go through, as researching can be very lonely. So having a sense of the process that virtually everyone goes through, and kind of both the critical process as well as the kind of emotional process, just knowing that everyone goes through it, and it's an expected part of researching and writing a literature review, I think is helpful. So just walking through these stages, you have initiation, selection, exploration, formulation, collection, and presentation. So kind of coming from that beginning, then kind of selecting and finding more specific material, going off and exploring, getting that clarity, confidence, and then getting to the point where you are able to present that material in written form. And so that initiation phase is often, and maybe where many of you are now, and that has a feeling of uncertainty. And you make very general decisions. You vaguely recognize this need. You're not really sure where it's going to go. You are really seeking those larger blocks or those larger pieces of background information. So that feeling is tentative and uncertain. Second, selection. The feeling is typically optimism. Hey, you found something. You got somewhere someone's actually talking about, something you want to talk about. And the feeling is optimism. You think, hey, this is actually going to go somewhere. You start to define and understand your problem. You are in that brainstorming phase, and you may be talking to others now. You have more language to talk to others who are also working with you or interested in your topic. Then comes exploration, and I think this can be a very difficult phase. And you see here the feelings associated are confusion and frustration. And typically that's when you become informed about a topic and you're investigating, but it's often that place where you realize either maybe you don't know as much as you thought or hoped you knew, or perhaps there isn't as much about the topic as you had expected. Once you've analyzed something and gotten through that optimism phase, there is often kind of a downside or to that. Confusion can be, you've now read so much about your topic that you are having difficulty sorting. This is a good place to take a lot of breaks to have that perspective. And hopefully from there, you then move into this formulation phase where you start to have clarity around your ideas. Maybe you've discussed with your committee and gotten some advice. You've maybe reached out to the librarian. that 3-phase is a good place for help and communication. And then you're able to narrow that topic focus and kind of move forward by selecting ideas. And this is a point when your outline may become more organized. The topics and subtopics might be moving around and getting crossed out. Fifth, collection, a sense of direction and competence. Again, hopefully you've met with your committee at some point here and you've got a better sense of maybe your beginning, middle, and end. You've started to really work your argument and define and support the focus throughout the review and the actions associated, gathering info, making notes of relevant info. And finally, presentation. And you will feel likely relief, could be satisfaction, could be disappointment. Maybe things didn't go where you wanted them to go exactly. Again, maybe there wasn't enough information or some associated difficulty like that. Or maybe you feel relief, you're satisfied, this has gone well, you've gathered the information you need and you're moving forward. This is the analysis and synthesis phase as well. So that kind of more polished communication style that will be developed in your literature review. So reading the literature and preparing to write. First of all, you want to work with an outline, even a rough one. And it's important to just get something down on the paper. You must be thinking about something. Write it down. It's not permanent. It will change. I promise you, it will change many times. I know very few people who end with the outline they began with. So that's to be expected, but do your best to, again, kind of confer with your committee and do some reading, maybe, again, check in with the library to get some sort of outline around your topic. And then have a goal in mind before you begin reading. This outline will help. Again, even a rough outline will help. One thing you want to avoid is just jumping into scholarly article after scholarly article, reading from the first page all the way through. That might be okay for a few studies, but it will be very time consuming and draining, and it's easy to lose track of the writing goal if you do that. So you do want to have a goal in mind. What do you want to learn about this study? Why did you choose it in the first place? Was the methodology relevant? Is it because it's recent? Is it because the study population is similar or dissimilar? Really be conscious about why you are taking a look at the topics or the resources that you are. And then key topic areas versus preparing a list of headings and potential subheadings. So key topic areas, those are, again, these big umbrellas. And they will, as you read, start to morph into more specific headings and subheadings. That will be your actual heading level 2, 3, 4 in your literature review. And then use your problem statement, key concepts, and variables, as well as variables in a quantitative study as your guide. And so that's a good place to start. And here is just an example of some of these keywords or topics that will be coming out of your literature. So when you're reading, you start to develop these concepts that are coming up, and then you'll start to see them repeat themselves throughout the literature. So here, flexible work policies, autonomy, work schedules, these are all possibilities for headings and subheadings in the literature. And here's just an example. This is the outline version of the topics that have been pulled here from this slide. So you can see how the larger topics became the higher bullet points. And then from there, depending on the specific subheadings or the topics that you may have read about, these subheadings and the lower level bullets have been developed. And this is just another, or this is actually a larger outline of the entire lit review. So you'll have this introduction, you'll discuss your search strategy, and then you can see you have main topic 1, 2, 3, 4 subtopics, methods, specific literature. Don't forget to read articles, method-specific articles, and then your conclusion. So reading to write. Making connections while reading is an important step to both reading comprehensions as well as synthesis. So reading to write involves the following goals. 1, to understand the material and be able to explain it, to paraphrase the ideas, and to synthesize the information with other articles and authors on related subjects. So we've touched on this a little bit before, but reading with a goal is going to help reading to write. Understanding the material, you'll understand the material better and better the more you learn and read. Paraphrasing, so making sure that you are rewording enough so that you're not taking material directly from the source. Synthesizing will also create more original material. So as you go on, your work should become more and more original as you synthesize more sources together based on your topic and organization. So scholarly articles have a formula to them. It begins with the abstract, goes on to the introduction, then theory, methods, results, and conclusion. So thinking critically about the scholarly article that you are taking a look at before you dive in through its parts is another good way of saving time and focusing on what you need. So know what you want to get out of it. You're going to theory, results, methods. Then you want to go directly to those sections. A lot of times the abstract will include a summary of all of that. So that's also a good place to start to determine whether you even want to read the article at all. And if it does not seem useful, I would advise to immediately stop reading and move on. And your time and your patience are valuable. So you want to quickly cull and remove any kind of articles that don't seem like they're going to be a fit. So reading to write sources, subject and key areas are seminal authors. So again, seminal authors or seminal works are those texts that may fall out of the date range, but are important to include in your topic. So you begin by having this clear objective. Again, maybe it is theory, method, results. You may choose a specific author as the focus, knowing they're the seminal author in the field. So that might also be something you could, another tactic, and you can expand from there in a kind of either citation chain or just continuing to move from that. And then you want to consider how the information will be used. So background or general knowledge on the subject or theory for the review you could use. If you want the statistics, then you'll be supporting the problem statement, evidence to support claims in a specific area. So you may be reading a study simply to support claims in one of your headings or subheadings. Examine the titles for signal words related to the answer to the question above and focus on the ones that appear to be relevant. And so this is, again, kind of pointing out that you want to review the abstract because it does contain that key information, and it's a really fast way fast, high-level way to help you determine what's relevant in terms of theory, method, design, as well as results. Once the goal of the information and purpose for use are established, then you want to skim to that area of the article that contains the information. Again, don't necessarily begin with the very beginning of the article and read all the way through. Sometimes it is useful, particularly maybe in the beginning when you are really in that big kind of collecting and learning phase. But you still would want to focus on which portions are most important to you. So skimming for what you need is okay and effective. I sometimes talk to students who don't think it's okay to skim, and it certainly is in the research process. That is the right technique It should not be necessary to read, again, everything that you pick up or look at, or it is turned up in your search from cover to cover, beginning to end. And here are just some pointers to find those sections that are most relevant. So background or theory will be in the intro, or the theory section. Methods will be potentially in the presentation of data, and findings will be in the results and conclusions section. So reading to write, note-taking. We touched a little bit on this earlier in terms of remembering where and what you have searched, but also you want to note-take to summarize, compare, and evaluate. So you can do that by writing a couple sentences that are the main ideas. And it's great to do that in your own words, even if it doesn't sound good. You can always make a note to fix the wording later, but notes are really for you to understand what you are writing, not for other people. So it's good not to be self-conscious about them and just to get down what is necessary. So you want to find a way of tracking information that works for you. An annotated outline in Microsoft Word. You might even start drafting and writing in that outline. You may draft a topic sentence for each paragraph, main idea. Again, doesn't need to be perfect. Just getting anything down for those earlier drafts is going to be really useful. And the more you can write in those early phases when you are in that researching phase, the better, I've found also, because it really helps you to remember what you have looked at. So sometimes I'll also work with students who may have researched a particular topic for 3 hours in the afternoon, and then there are no notes about it, and it's easy to forget. So forcing yourself to jot down anything to kind of at least jog your memory about what you have done with that period of time is also really useful. You could use a literature review matrix. I won't click through to that right now, but that works for some people, and it's quite detailed, and I think makes synthesis easier. You could use citation or information management software, or you can print hard copies and annotate and organize by hand, use old school post-its and flags and writing style, which the important thing is that it works for you, that it makes you feel confident and organized about your work. So make connections while reading and note-taking. Again, these don't need to be genius. They don't need to be right. They just need to be a connection. And oftentimes when you go back to the work, it's surprising how useful some of these connections actually are. So anything that you can relate to something you've read previously, or any kind of insight that you might have while reading, is really useful to jot down. Compare and contrast as you go, jotting notes or writing complete sentences, whatever comes to you, and begin outlining in a way that's efficient for transitioning note-taking into writing. So use the information sentences from note-taking into drafting the outline. Sometimes I will use really messy notes, and then I'll have a separate document with an outline, and I'll start to just copy and paste into different sections. And that helps me to see where there's duplicates, and it helps me to kind of see where I'm going and get a start on writing. So write topic sentences or thesis statements. Again, these might change as you go on, most likely will, but just getting those sentences down is helpful. And use the comparison information as the body of the paragraph and write a topic sentence that fits. So comparing between studies, between authors, will be those sentences, or the body sentences, supportive evidence of those main topic sentences that you're developing. So focus on the details. What information is needed and where it will be used. So again, going in just to summarize, really kind of having a goal when you're reading. Also jotting down what's missing or what you might need. Skimming that article and pulling out the information. Paraphrasing and summarizing key information. Comparing and contrasting to other articles on the same topic. So again, comparing doesn't mean that you are combining studies that are similar. They just need to be on the same topic. So it's a comparing and contrasting. 50 sentences and paragraphs into the document where needed. And again, this process is iterative and they may move around. You may break a subtopic into 2 more topics. You may delete topics altogether. So grouping these articles and resources by headings is another way to help with that, the organization process. The annotated outline, write the points you want to make. So again, they don't need to be published, but just jotting down something about the points that you want to make. Ensure your paragraphs have topic sentences. If you can't write a topic sentence for your paragraph, eventually there's some work to do on that paragraph. It may need to be combined with another one. You may need to be clearer about your thinking on a particular point. So a paragraph should have a topic sentence that introduces that discussion of the points to follow. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them. Yes. So sometimes it can seem dry. It's once you can lose the perspective that you're writing for a reader, and you have to reintroduce the topic in a very clear and concise way. So remember that you'll include that type of writing. It won't all be as maybe detailed or specific. You have to begin by coming out higher level again and generalizing so that the reader can understand the paragraph and the organization. Avoid study by study summary. So the synthesis of these ideas and points, they need to be, again, compared and contrasted. It shouldn't just be an analysis of each study you've read paragraph by paragraph. So I will open it up to questions here. I can take a look in the chat box. Take these last 5 minutes. So I see here there's a question about how many peer-reviewed articles, and I see one student has a suggestion of 75 total for chapter 2. And I see that, so Kelly did a good job answering this, but yes, that's for the capstone, it's for the entire study. And it's just a general idea. I think sometimes it's useful to have a very generalized roadmap. It's not a rule. You won't be checked to be sure you have 75 sources, but it's more of a generalization. And also really depends on the type of study that you're doing. Let's see. And then again, we've got just, you can take a look here that we've got the link posted for this session, which is recorded, and it should be up fairly soon. So go ahead and copy that and save that if you'd like to review what we discussed today. And otherwise, I think I will kind of sum up here. I don't see too much in the chat box. Oh, quick question. Does the age of the article matter? It does matter. Generally, we want to see recent research. So you want to keep your research within the past 5 years, if at all possible. We want to be sure that your research is relevant. So that's a rule of thumb that most of that literature must be contained from, published in the past 5 years. There are exceptions in terms of seminal studies. So some of those foundational blocks, those will be older. And there are other exceptions as well. Sometimes there is just specific information you want to include that doesn't fit within that recent time frame, and that's just something to kind of run by your committee. But in general, you do want to keep those sources more recent. And if anyone has any other questions, go ahead and pop them into the general rule, 5 years for the full dissertation. Yes, yes, for the most part. Okay, well, I am going to sign off here. I thank all of you for attending, and I hope it was useful, and hope to see you in the next session. Take care. Bye.